The mother lets out a cry of help, which is understood by all. And whether they're from the same colony or not doesn't matter. The males in the vicinity that hear that will rush to protect the mother and baby. And so they have to not only shoot the mother, they have to shoot her protectors too. And then grab the baby. The grubby hand of the poacher ripping the baby from her mother's dead body.
We have had primates in Tanzania who have lost their babies. The mothers undergo the same separation anxiety and then sense of loss that happens in a human mother. The more aware the animal is of what's happening to it and what may happen to it, then the more it is torture.
Ripped straight from their mother's arms as babies by poachers in the jungle, they are sold into the pet trade, entertainment, and biomedical research. In this foreign human world, the only end for them is either death or a sanctuary.
I'm Heidi. People in town call me Mama Changa, monkey mother.
17 years ago, Heidi came to Mexico from Germany to retire and live on the beach with her husband.
We went to dinner and the owner of the restaurant came around and said, Heidi, there's a lady wanting to sell a little monkey. And both my husband and I said, absolutely not. And he said, why not? They're so cute. And I said, well, number one, we heard rumors about the poaching. And the next day, the lady and the little monkey came where we were staying. And she needed us to babysit the little monkey. We said, okay, when are you going to pick him up? Tomorrow at 1, fine. And when she handed to me, it smelled bad, you know, and I thought, well, maybe that's the way baby monkeys smell. I didn't know. But when I took his diapers off, he had the most horrible bloody diaper rash I have ever seen. We took him to a highly recommended veterinarian in order to see if he needed medication. We would buy it and give it to her when she picked the little monkey up. But he said, there's no use. That little monkey is dead. He has 24, maximum 48 hours. So for 3 weeks, every day we went to Playa del Carmen, and we have a fabulous veterinarian, 2-hour treatments on his lungs. And all the other things had to administered in very tiny doses because of his young age. And 3 weeks later, he said he's gonna make it. And he's made it. He's our alpha male, 16 years old, and in perfect health. Our first one, the one you saw as a baby, that we and he's now the big alpha. The plan was we're gonna get him all well and grown, which the idiots that we were, we assumed would be about a year. And then we would take him out to the jungle to find his own. And we were very strictly and promptly informed, oh no, you don't. You have taken on a responsibility. He cannot survive.
Chaac was taken from the wild by human hands, poached from his mother's arms. He was the first of now 72 spider monkeys Heidi Michelin cares for at the Jungle Place Sanctuary in Mexico. Many of Chaac's peers at Jungle Place ended up at Heidi's sanctuary at the end of a difficult and torturous journey. The trauma of being stolen by their mothers by poachers had just been the beginning.
That was one of the ones that came from the zoo and was 5 inches red, and they had put bleach on him.
And Lady, Chaac's mate, and the mother of his 2 daughters, came with
the rough rope grown into her flesh. We had to, which partially collapsed her trachea, and she still has a hard time sometimes, with food. And she had, her teeth were filed to the gum, and she had a finger missing. Some of them pulled the teeth out. We got some where the fangs were pulled out, so they can bite. And I'm sure they don't anesthetize them before.
One monkey named Bali came in particularly bad shape.
All of her hair was burned off the back here. And it was kind of, had yucky little things in it. So I gave her a little bath, which got her tail wet. And then I discovered scar after scar after scar on her tail.
Heidi believes she was part of a fire show for tourists that took place nightly.
And that's why she was petrified when it got dark. She knew then the torture would start. I had to get up and rock her and walk, and rock her and walk. I counted the steps, I counted the things. And usually as soon as it was only about 20 minutes or so, and I put her back in bed, she was asleep, and as soon as she realized, she started raising hell again.
Bali's burns were because she was used for entertainment. Chaac was someone's pet, and others who had their teeth pulled out were used for biomedical research.
I'm Craig Stanford, and I'm a professor of biological sciences at USC. I'm director of the Jane Goodall Research Center at USC.
Craig Stanford is a primatologist at the University of Southern California who studies primate behavior in the wild.
Their emotional template is a very simpler version of our own emotional template. So when you tear a family apart because a poacher kills a parent, or the parents are caught and the babies are sold into the pet trade or the laboratory trade, then it has to be emotionally wrenching and traumatic in any way that we can measure emotional trauma. In many animals, it's difficult to measure emotional trauma, but it's not so difficult with primates because they are so much like us.
Monkeys are our cousins. In fact, in a lot of ways, we call them humans. They're more human than we are.
Primate similarity can be measured through DNA. Human and most primate DNA only have a difference of about 5%.
We're primates. We're one of about 400 primate species. And when we look at monkeys, we look at apes, we're looking at animals that they're qualitatively different than other animals are.
In addition, widely accepted theories on evolution state that humans and monkeys share a common ancestor.
They have big brains, they're more socially complex than most other animals, and they have needs that go along with that complexity and intelligence. That means we really need to think carefully about how we're going to take care of them. Can we take care of them in captivity or not?
The main reason why someone should not have a pet monkey is that the monkeys were stolen from their mothers. And I don't care what kind of monkey you get, and I don't care if you grow a tail and swing through the trees. You do not make a good companion for the monkey.
Manuel and Eileen got a pet capuchin monkey named Chucky. They bought him off a website that buys and sells baby monkeys. They soon found out that he required constant attention. His owners opted to put Chucky in a diaper to make it easier for them. The constant rubbing of the diaper caused Chucky to lose his fur around his midsection.
Baba? Come on, let's get him, Baba.
They also decided to remove his teeth.
We had it removed only because of safety precautions, because that's their number one line of defense for monkeys.
Because it's hard for him to chew without teeth, the only way for him to get all his nutrients is through a baby bottle.
Good. And then normally we just
Let him loose.
we'll let them loose to run around. They're just gonna probably give him. Yeah.
They loved Chucky, but when he reached sexual maturity, Chucky became more and more aggressive.
Chucky, open the door.
And like many monkey pet owners, decided they needed to give their monkey away.
Bye-bye, honey.
And so Chucky's journey as a pet would come to an end.
And then he has all this hangout. He's got a heat lamp here for winter. He's got AC. And he's got a runway where he can go out when he wants to. Okay?
Well, he will be here first.
Yeah, we're going to let him out right here.
Okay.
And then you can hang out with him in here. And then I want you to come out and call him out so you can see his outdoor. Okay? All right?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
How's it going? Look at that fancy dress. Huh? This is Chucky's new outdoor habitat right here. We've decorated it all beautifully, planted some more plants and put some toys in there. So he can go from this outdoor habitat through here. He'll travel right down this runway, travel in here, and he'll be able to travel right inside his indoor. Now we're going to let him out first in his indoor.
Chucky.
And then once we get in there, I want you to undress him. You get to be a naked monkey now.
Okay.
Okay, no more diapers.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go in.
Hey, Chucky.
There's Colin.
Chucky had never seen another monkey.
Come on. Here, take your shirt off. Come on.
The only family he knew were his human family.
Okay.
Once in his indoor habitat, Kerry needed his family's help to introduce him to the outside enclosure, where he would be able to climb higher than he's ever been able to before.
Chucky.
Chucky, come on, there you go. Come on. Come on. Come on, Chuck.
Come on, let's go. There we go.
Come on. There you go. Come on, Chuck.
Yeah, right there.
Chuck, come on.
There you go.
Come on. Chucky, come on.
Get up.
Come on, Chuck.
That's a good boy.
Come on, Chuck.
Okay,
Come on, over here, look. Come on, there you go. All right, good deal. All right, come on, keep going. Keep going.
Me.
Keep going right there. Go ahead. Go ahead. There you
Excuse
go.
me, mister.
Go ahead. Pick it up. All right,
There you
good
go.
deal.
I'm gonna go.
Good job, honey.
As Chucky explored his new habitat, his family signed him over to jungle friends.
We're going to be visiting as much as possible. All right, I can't, she will, but we'll make it a point to. It's only 2 hours away, so It's close.
He's going to miss you.
Oh, I know. She's going to miss him, so we'll make a point of it.
You're his family.
Yeah. We'll be back.
Unfortunately, the separation wasn't just hard on the human family. Chucky started having seizures as soon as his family left. The exact cause is unknown, but just a few short days after Chucky's journey at Jungle Friends, vets believe he had a panic attack and died of a broken heart.
So just as with humans, what's the worst punishment we can inflict on a person short of death is putting them in solitary confinement. So when you take any primate, monkey, ape, and you do not give it, you deprive it of social contact, that's really awful punishment.
Prior to coming to Jungle Friends, many of these monkeys have lived lives of isolation, never having met another monkey. Casey here was given a mirror as a baby, living in her small cage. That mirror became her only connection to her own kind. It became her best friend. At Jungle Friends, her life is different, but there will always be a hole.
People say, isn't this a great place for the monkeys to be? They've got these fabulous habitats. And truth be told, I'm a jailer and they're in prison. They're under lock and key. And even though a lot of these monkeys were born in captivity, they know in their heart of hearts there's something really wrong here.
Monkeys are highly intelligent, social animals. In the wild, their social hierarchy often mirrors humans. Nicor and Chopin are cotton-top tamarins. They pair with their mate for life.
You will hardly ever see one alone. They live in the wild in male-female pairs. So we have them all paired up here. They'll sit and groom each other and travel with each other and hold on. Their tails will wrap around each other.
When Nicor and Chopin came to Jungle Friends, they huddled together in a crate, keeping each other safe. Where they had come from was very different than this new place. They both waited until morning and ventured out together to explore their new habitat. Before coming to Jungle Friends, Nicor had lost his foot, 4 toes, and half of his tail. But after some time at the sanctuary, he had developed large biceps climbing around his enclosure. He rarely is far from his mate Chopin, who spends most of her days filling her large appetite by foraging for bugs. Luckily for them, the two life partners were not separated from each other when they came to the sanctuary. But how did these highly social animals get to Carrie's Jungle Friends?
We had 10 cotton-top tamarins come to us that were in laboratory research. And the researcher called me and asked if we could take some tamarins. I said, well, certainly. How many? And he said 70. I chose to take all the special needs monkeys. So I took 10 of the special needs tamarins that were diabetic, chronic diarrhea, missing limbs or tails, or were just elderly.
The cotton-top tamarins that came to Jungle Friends came from a laboratory at the University of Wisconsin, headed by Charles Snowden. He used the cotton-tops specifically because their social structures were similar to humans.
So these monkeys were very important in terms of being perhaps a model for how human families could develop. How do pairs pairs that live monogamously, that rear children together, how do they form a good relationship to begin with? And we know, for example, that human families are subject to a high rate of divorce.
To observe the tamarins' monogamous social structures, Snowdon's research required that their living conditions be as natural as possible.
These are monkeys that live in rainforests. They live high up in the trees. So the other thing we tried to do is to build very tall cages, 7 to 8 feet high.
But Snowdon's lab is in the minority of US laboratories.
Government requirements for cages are a bit smaller than that. They're 20 inches by 20 inches by 20 inches for a pair of marmosets or tamarins.
That's 2 inches shorter than 2 pieces of paper stacked. This is the home for monkeys kept in laboratories.
I'm not sure why the government set cage sizes so small. I suspect it's inertia. People start with one type of caging and keep it that way without making many modifications along the way.
In labs across the United States, monkeys are kept in small metal cages. Small cages are sometimes deliberately part of the experiment. The experiments shown here, conducted through the National Institute of Health, are meant to induce anxiety, depression, and fear in monkeys. Confined to isolation in small cages, the monkeys react similarly to humans, with depression and psychosis.
Our goal was to try to keep these animals happy in captivity. I ended up having to draw some lines for myself.
After 30 years working with his tamarins in his uniquely large cages, the government presented him with an ultimatum.
In order to continue using an animal model, we would need to be much more invasive than we had hoped to be. We need to do some manipulations in the brain. All of us got together and discussed this, and we all agreed unanimously that this is not the way we wanted to work with animals. Some of the technical staff realized that they weren't going to be able to be employed if we didn't renew their grant, and so people agreed that this is what we had to do, even if they were going to lose their jobs and jobs that they really love. It was better for us to close the colony and find good homes for each of the animals somewhere else where they would continue to live in a non-invasive environment.
What Snowdon and his team were asked to do involves invasive procedures into the brain. Monkeys are laid across operating tables, their skulls cut into, so that the researcher can gain access to their brain. But the animal is left alive, and after the procedure, they are left disoriented and confused, abandoned in their own inner circle of hell.
Hi, my name is Michael Slusher. For 4 years, I worked in a research lab with about 30 monkeys. I was responsible for experiments on them that were both unethical and immoral, and certainly painful. At the end of the day, I was responsible for killing them and taking out their organs for study. There were a lot of moments where I felt that what I was doing was wrong. And I think the mindset that I was in at the time was that the greater good of a potential treatment or cure for something outweighed whatever work I was doing. It did become obvious to me, though, that a lot of the studies I did were dead ends, and that was considered to be the nature of the beast. It was almost like throwing spaghetti at the wall sometimes to see what would stick. Did the science result in a cure or a treatment? Not that I'm aware of, not with the research that I did. The monkey facility was in the basement. It was very loud. Cages were very small. They were about 2.5 by 2.5 cube cages. They lived in each one by themselves. They were not allowed to interact with each other. The smell, the sound, the entire environment was very, very claustrophobic, especially for an animal that's used to swinging around in miles and miles of jungle and rainforest. I did experience some stereotypic behaviors. such as pacing, sitting in a corner and rocking, holding themselves and rocking. There would be a lot of bar and cage gnawing going on. They're smart enough to know that they're not going to get out that way, but they would continue to do it to the point where their mouths would bleed. When they were being killed, the monkeys never received any kind of warm send-off. It was just very clinical. It was just time to put this monkey down. And we didn't just put him down. We had to put him down so we could cut him open and take all their parts out. So there was no real reason to show any kind of affection towards this animal because it really was a piece of meat at that point. There's a kind of switch that you turn, and I imagine that prison executioners also have the same kind of thing. They stop seeing that person as a person. It's just an object. There was one monkey in particular that had a completely different behavior, and it breaks my heart thinking about it now, and he's one of the reasons why I really had to get out of the industry. But he would sidle up to the side of the cage in a very meek, defensive, cowering posture, and he would reach his hand through the bars to try to reach you, and he would just look up at you with this submissive, meek face. And there's no escaping, there's no denying whatsoever what that expression was. He wanted companionship, he wanted attention, he wanted affection. It was heartbreaking. Even to my scientific-minded eyes, that was too much. I just couldn't look in their eyes anymore and think this is okay, that this is normal. So I don't have any other way really to say I'm sorry other than to try to prevent it from happening to other animals. Since then, I've had quite a few nightmares about laboratory animals, and they're all pretty horrifying. I would like those to go away.
The FDA has stated that 92% of drugs shown to be effective in animals failed in human clinical trials. With those odds, flipping a coin would have been a more reliable predictor.
There is a consumption of primates in research that's really far beyond the biomedical needs that genuinely have a direct application to humans.
And most of these universities and pharmaceutical companies prefer to keep the public in the dark about what goes on inside these laboratories.
I was told to keep it quiet about whether we worked with monkeys in particular. They are very powerful and very large and well-funded with lots of lawyers who would like to squash any of this information from getting out.
We tried to contact a few of these laboratories to give them a chance to tell their side of the story, but we were only met with rejections.
Hi, may I speak with Matt Byers, please? Hi, may I speak with Kristen Pilon, please? Hi, this is Cynthia Gillett. I'm doing a documentary about primates going to a rescue sanctuary coming from vivisection labs, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in doing an interview.
I'm not interested in doing an interview with you for that documentary film you're making, but good luck with it. Goodbye.
I believe that if I was to reveal the name of the university or the people that I worked with, it would certainly lead to legal trouble for me. As far as a black van coming by and whisking me away, I hate to think that's also possible, but stranger things have happened.
And so exposure to the issue has been slow, but some are starting to take notice.
These highly intelligent, highly social animals experience terror and pain, and it's happening right in our backyard. Brutality and just absolute hell. And it seems to me
that no one is actually checking up on the plans for these companies, what they intend to do.
April Evans dreamt of working for NASA ever since she was a little girl stargazing with her grandpa. She was a lead engineer for NASA for 9 years. But this experiment to mimic what could happen to astronauts traveling to Mars disturbed April so terribly. She left the job she loved.
I needed to represent myself and be true to my own ethics.
And despite the growing opinion opposing primate research, thousands of monkeys are still used every year in animal experimentation in the US. More than 90% of these monkeys end their lives splayed on an operating table, their bodies dissected for research. But for the few who are not killed, they could end up at a sanctuary like Jungle Friends, their former lives having left both physical and mental scars.
A lot of the labs don't really tell me what they're doing to them, and a lot of the techs don't even know or want to know. So a lot of them just come here and I really don't know what they've been doing.
It takes many exams just to unravel the health problems these monkeys have, most of which were caused by the research done to them.
Foods do not flow as quick either. I know, sweetie, I know.
At Jungle Friends, Kari continues to work with the monkeys long after their physical ailments are cured. For some with PTSD, their emotional recovery could take much longer.
As thinking, sentient creatures ourselves, to treat those around us with some degree of morality also.
I'm Jonathan Kraft. I'm a former animal entertainer, and I'm now the founder and director of Keepers of the Wild.
Jonathan Kraft started his career in Las Vegas, where he ran a multi-million-dollar show that used wild animals as performers.
Even though I took real good care of my animals, you put them in a transport box, then you transport them to the facility where your show is. They basically sit in a transport box, which is generally very small, where they can barely turn around in. And then they sit backstage and wait for their little 15 minutes or their 50 seconds of fame, so to speak. And then when they're done, they go back into their transport box, being transported all the way back to their facility, and then they go back in a cage. And that's basically the life of an animal in show business.
Having to confine these animals in cages like this started wearing on Jonathan, and he started seeing how some of his other colleagues were treating their own animals.
I've seen primates get beaten horribly, deprived from food, water, enrichment, to specifically perform an act. And when that doesn't happen, then they're a bad boy, or they'll get a bump on the nose, or in some cases worse, they're beaten, or they're prod with an electric prod. Or I've seen, I've got one primate here where the guy used to burn him with a cigarette butt.
These trainers resorted to such force because for an animal to be trained, they need to be taught to go against their instincts.
All of the things that they make them do in the movies is all forced. It's not natural behavior. They don't do what humans do, even though they look like a human.
But even though Jonathan never abused his animals, he started noticing something about them.
Animals that need such vast areas and spaces, that they're confined to such a small area. Even if the animals are not beaten and are fed well and have good medical care, it is a psychological nightmare for them. And so That's kind of what clicked for me. And no matter how fancy I made it, how cute it was, and, you know, from a human standpoint of view, if you really look through the eyes from an animal, they're not happy. And so that's kind of what changed my mind. There was like really a time where it just kind of clicked.
After that realization, Jonathan quit the show business and opened a sanctuary to specifically focus on rescuing animals from entertainment.
This is Billy, our baboon, and Billy, of course, came also out of entertainment. Look at these little hands. Look at these little hands. Look at all the little fingerprints. Can I put something in there? Kiss. You're a good boy. Yeah, you're such a good boy. Huh? Yeah. See, they're so smart, aren't they? They're just very intelligent, and I just wish I could give you a lot more freedom, huh? Yeah. You're a good boy, and we love you.
Billy came to Keepers of the Wild after beginning his life in the hands of an entertainer.
Billy the baboon, right behind us over here, is a wonderful primate. However, he was used by an entertainer in Las Vegas and other places as well. He was used for movies, for commercials, used to do birthday parties, a wide variety of things. This particular individual is very abusive, but these people just don't have any idea on how to take care of primates. He was in a tiny little cage. You know, Vegas gets to be 110, 115 degrees in the summer. He had virtually no shade. He had no water, because if there is water, he would play in it and he would dump it. And so when I got there, there were about 30 plastic empty water bottles that he had flattened in the bottom of his cage. And so by the time we got Billy, he was pretty messed up.
Billy has lived at Keepers of the Wild for 13 years now. The intelligence of a baboon mixed with a wild animal means Billy can be dangerous.
He's like a typical young male teenager. He's just full of piss and vinegar, if I can say that. Not only that, he's got real long arms. They're very intuitive. They're very inquisitive. They always want to learn things and find things out. So Billy has cost us thousands of dollars just on people's glasses, radios, other things that he'll steal from you. And so he's a little conniver. If Billy doesn't get something that he wants or doesn't like something, he will let you know, and he could be extremely dangerous. I wouldn't want to go in a cage with him, even though I've been with him for 13 years. I'll go in the cage with tigers. I won't go in a cage with Billy. Even though he's very sweet to me, I can give him a treat. He'll kiss me on the lips. You a good boy. Give me 5. Do I get the other 5 too? Mm-hmm. But you got to watch him. He's a wild animal, and he's a potentially very dangerous wild animal.
The lifespan of a baboon like Billy could be up to 50 years. At 16 years old, he still has a long life to live in his habitat at Keepers of the Wild. As is the case with many of Jonathan's primates, that life is marred with psychological trauma caused by their previous life in entertainment.
These guys were horribly abused. They lived in cages about 4 feet tall. I don't even think they were 4 feet, but about 2 feet in diameter. They had to cut the locks off because there was about a year's worth of feces in those cages. And in some cases, there were even some baby skeletons that were on the bottom. And it's just, I just cannot imagine that a mother primate sees that, and they didn't even bother cleaning him out or give him any kind of medical attention. Hi, you're Vlad.
The primates from that abusive situation still have psychological issues even a decade later.
This is Dexter. And Dexter has got some issues. Hi, Dexter. What are you doing? Are you a good boy? Now, you notice the kind of behavior that he has. Oh, come on, Dexter. Be nice. Be very nice. Be very nice. Okay. You're a good boy. Yeah, what is that? Huh? But Dexter has a typical behavior which is not natural, where he'll start biting himself. huh, you start biting yourself? Are you a good boy? And he can really be cantankerous. See, that's not natural. See, that's just real obsessive behavior that is so sad. That's what you get. But it's just a really mental disorder that is from the repetitiveness and the confinement. And they just have unnatural behavior. See, look at that. That's just terrible. Now, we've been rehabilitating this animal for 13 years. And you should have seen them when we got them. They were nuts. I mean, they would, if you got near them, they would try to rip you apart. And it is obviously because of the terrible abuse that they went through. Huh. But you are still a good boy, and we love you, huh? This is Carlos. Hi, Carlos. He will typically sit with a towel over his head and he'll rock all day long. Very unnatural behavior and very sad. You're just a real good boy, aren't you, Carlos? Oh, be nice, be nice. Oh, you be nice. Oh, come on, you be nice. There you go, yeah. Doesn't really try to hurt you, but he's just not sure of himself, you know. They removed our canines basically so that they can handle him when they breed him. Primates have huge canines. They could do some serious damage. And so so they removed their canines no matter what kind of trauma that it causes. It's just appalling what they do to these animals, just for profit. That's all it is for. It's for money. Hi, Buster. Come here. Come here, boy. Buster, come here. This is Buster. And you'll notice that Buster is really, really you're a proud boy, huh? Come on up here. I love you. Yes. Now, the reason Buster is doing this to his testicles is because when we actually got him in the beginning, his testicles were about the size like that, like grapefruits, because he had a terrible hernia. And so we know that he was in a lot of pain. And so we had the hernia, of course, taken care of. And so ever since, he's been very proud to show me that his hernia is gone. And so that's why he does that. Buster, are you a good boy? Huh? You are such a good boy. Yeah, you show me, huh? Hi, Squeaks. You'll notice a different behavior with her. See? Much different behavior. And so, what's the matter, Squeaks? Now, I've known these primates for 13 years, and you see how they act. And so it's a permanent psychological damage that gets done to these animals. It's very sad. But usually, if Nathan were to come up, you'll see immediately he'll grab the inside of his thigh. That's how he used to get punished. And so he used to actually pinch himself till he got bloody. And he also used to pinch his nipples because that's how they punished him. They pinched his nipples or the inside of his thigh. Primates just seems to be a lifetime of real psychological problems. And of course, the difference, you know, between primates and the tigers that we have, yeah, we do have tigers that have psychological problems and has made an impact on them, but they seem to just adjust a little bit better. With primates, it is pretty much a lifetime of psychological problems that you just cannot get rid of, and they do not adjust well.
At Keepers of the Wild, the primates no longer have to perform an act for their food. All their medical needs are taken care of, and they want for nothing.
Is Billy happy? I guess he's as happy as he can be. Would he be happier in the wild, providing he could survive there now? Absolutely.
Across the world, monkeys are often used as street performers. Their ability to caricature humans means they are subject to acts other animals cannot perform.
In some encouragement, first monkey tackling the dog around the course, will be the winner. It's anybody's race to that number 2 monkey go. It's pandemonium in the ring.
At Jungle Friends, Kari took in one of these unwilling street performers.
This is Jimmy Sr., and Jimmy's in his 50s, and he has had a long, sad story. He was an organ grinder's monkey on the streets of New York for the first 20 years of his life. If you look close, you can see they've amputated several of his fingers and his thumb so that he could not pick his lock. The USDA called me and said, we've got to confiscate this monkey because he's in an abusive situation. But I warn you, he's pretty much gone mad. Do you still want him? He's pretty much comatose, stares into space, and doesn't make eye contact. I said, oh, he can come here and be crazy with the rest of us. So he came, and he did just stare into space and was pretty much comatose.
Jimmy Sr. came to Jungle Friends when he was 44 years old. To help with his rehabilitation, Kari introduced him to another elderly monkey from a circus named Chi-Chi. The two bonded, and Jimmy came out of his comatose shell. They quickly became loving companions. At Jungle Friends, he got to entertain visitors on his own terms. After spending a decade with his best friend Chi-Chi, Jimmy passed away peacefully in his sleep when he was 54 years old. Jungle Friends houses many elderly primates like Jimmy Sr. With lifespans into their 50s, they often behave like the wise old members of our own species. One of Jimmy Sr.'s other elderly companions, named Puchi, has given hope to both monkeys and humans alike. Puchi was found when he was 40 years old, running down the Eisenhower Expressway in Chicago. All his hair had been burnt off, and his right eye had been gouged out. Today, Puchi lives a quiet life at Jungle Friends. He forages for treats during the day, and every night he wraps himself in his blanket from head to toe and falls fast asleep. Sometimes a friend comes over, calling for Puchi's excellent grooming skills. And then he's back to sleep.
You look into their eyes and you see the intelligence, you see something of humanity in them also, and you see an awful lot of dignity in these animals as well. They're trying to lead their lives. When they get into their nests at night, they build nests every night, they lie back, they put their elbow under their head, they look up at the sky, and you have to think that they're thinking some of the same things that we think when we go to bed at night and think about our day.
after their forced life as a pet, an entertainer, or a test subject, they knock on these doors looking for refuge, but they still end up in a cage. They can never be returned to the wild. Once that hand rips them from their mother's arms, their destiny has been set. They will never again be a free monkey, and instead become humans' prisoner. But through the bars, they reach out to the people they should be afraid of. And it's only those people who can change their destiny.